All right, it's just about 19 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock. Welcome back to the No Morning Show here on TTT. And it's time for Your Body and You. Joining us this morning from our sister isle, Tobago, is Mrs. Rhonda Thompson-Benjamin, who is Counselling Psychologist at Enriched Life Ltd. Good morning to you, Mrs. Benjamin.
Good morning to you all at TTT, and good morning to Trinidad and Tobago, and a happy new year to each and every one of you.
Yes, thank you. All the best to you as well for 2022. So we're talking about this fear of COVID and also the fear of vaccines. What do you think is driving this fear of COVID-19? Because it seems as if one is somehow playing with the other, that the fear of COVID is somehow intertwined with the fear of the vaccines.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to understand that at the core of our human experience is that need for survival. So that need for safety and security. And throughout this pandemic, we have seen our basic needs being threatened. For most of us, that is. And because of this, our natural response is to become fearful. So it's a natural human response to something new, something that is challenging. And this is why many citizens, especially in Trinidad and Tobago, are so fearful. In terms of the vaccine, I think many of us, we are sometimes not as educated. Sometimes we are not doing sufficient research. And additionally, we tend to hold on to those things in social media that may not be as accurate. And I think there is a need for us to really do our research and to really understand what is happening, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but in the world.
I have to say I agree with you, but if we understand this, if we have at our core this basic instinct to survive and to thrive, why then aren't we, especially in Tobago, taking up those vaccines, understanding that according to the science or according to the WHO and the authorities that be, this is an opportunity to preserve that thing that we most desire, life?
Yeah. Well, I think it's for a number of reasons. As I mentioned before, that lack of education might be a factor. And especially in Tobago, we are accustomed to our bush medicine, and we know if we drink this, we will build up our immune system. So sometimes we really rely on, those herbal medications, and sometimes we feel as though it is sufficient. However, we really need to become educated. As I mentioned before, sometimes we share things in our communities, that might be inaccurate. And, people are fearful, and some persons may have health reasons as to why they would not want to take this vaccine. So it's important that we look at it from a holistic or comprehensive view when we are talking about this fear and why persons are not choosing to be vaccinated.
Yeah. Is fear psychological?
It is psychological. It is psychological. And it not only affects our mind, but it also affects the body and our ability to process. Because when we are operating out of fear, logic sometimes goes out of the window. So you find that persons make irrational decisions, persons that would have been educated, persons who, would generally make sound decisions. Because of this fear, it really triggers that illogical response, as human beings.
Well, what can we do then if we recognize that, ignorance to something can trigger this fear in us, especially of the COVID-19 pandemic, of the vaccines? And we have seen the Ministry of Health go out almost at some point every single day, trying to explain to people, giving them, answers to questions that may be posed. If we have all of this information out there, whether through social media, through websites, through press conferences, if all of this information is out there, what do you think is still driving the fear?
I think as I mentioned before, it's our inability to really comprehend what is happening. And I mean, it's something new. It's something new that is happening in our society. And for me, this is my first time going through a pandemic. And that is the same situation for most citizens. So naturally, they would be a bit skeptical. However, I think we have sufficient research. I think the Ministry of Health, they would have done their best as to educate the population. And at this point, it's really choice. You have to decide what is best for you. You have to decide what is best for your family. Because some persons are saying that persons are dying because they are taking the vaccines. Now, what are the statistics of these persons in comparison to those who are dying because they were not vaccinated and they would have gotten the virus? So I think we really need to rely on the facts. Because naturally, we can be very emotional. And as I said before, we tend to take logic out of the door. So today I want to urge you citizens to, do some research and not just follow hearsay.
Yeah, what are some of the steps that we can take to process something so that we don't end up with these illogical thoughts out of fear or being extremely emotional? So in terms of like the pandemic, what are some of the things we can do to just process, to break down, to understand, what is happening so that we can make rational decisions?
I think that is a very important question. And I think the first thing that we should do is really identify that fear, identify that emotion, because sometimes we are going about our days and we are feeling that something is up, something is wrong, but we fail to really identify what is happening. So that's the first thing. Identify that fear, identify the doubt, identify the anxiety. And then you would want to really assess those thoughts that accompany those feelings. So what am I thinking? Am I thinking that I'm going to die? Am I thinking that the vaccines are going to kill me? And you really want to assess those thoughts. Are they logical? Are they based on empirical evidence? And you really want to reframe some of those thoughts. For example, some persons are working from home and, they would say, I'm just working from home. Yes, I just fed up with this. But sometimes we really have to change our perspective. I get a wonderful opportunity now to really interact with my family. And I am also given the opportunity to improve my technical skills. I am safer at home. So we really need to reframe some of those thoughts. And sometimes, through developing a social network, those persons around you that could give you sound advice, those persons who can say, you know what, I really think you need some help. And then they would be able to help you by referring you to a professional or someone who may have the expertise to help you in this particular area. I think those are some of the things that we can do to really process these feelings.
Yeah, but is it irrational or illogical if somebody says, well, I can die if I'm vaccinated and I can die if I'm unvaccinated?
That is not irrational, because when we look at the news, we are seeing that people, they are dying. It's something that is real. It's something that is happening. However, if you are following the protocols, if you are doing things to prevent and to protect yourself from contracting this virus, you need to look at the likelihood. What is the likelihood that this would happen to me? We understand that there are persons that are taking the precautions and they are still contracting the virus. But coupled with that and the vaccine, what is the likelihood of me dying through this particular pandemic? So it is not illogical. But what we need to really do is focus on what we can control.
Right. And what we can control, personal responsibility.
Correct. Yes.
Definitely. But I thought it was important for us to have this discussion because we're seeing, especially in Tobago, where the vaccination uptake is low. In Trinidad as well, but it seems as if lower in Tobago. And when we're hearing of 15 deaths in Tobago in 4 days, that makes me think, okay, what is their irrational fear? I mean, I don't know if there's ever a time when fear is rational. I think Ruckus was saying yes, because if you know something is dangerous, then you can fear it. Is it irrational to fear something that you know can harm you? So then I'm trying to figure out the balance where this COVID-19 pandemic is concerned and the vaccinations are concerned in terms of how people interpret or internalize what is happening and how we help with that. Because, as you said, it's not illogical for somebody to be like, okay, I may die whether or not I take the vaccine. I may die whether or not I catch COVID-19 pandemic. So I think the stakes are a little bit different when you have something that, the yeas or the nays may not be equal, but that both are possibilities, I may catch COVID-19. I may not catch COVID-19. I may die from COVID-19. I may not die from COVID-19. I may die from a vaccine. I may not die from a vaccine. So when you have these two possibilities, Mrs. Benjamin, and somebody comes to you and expresses it in this way that, doc, listen, I kind of confused because realistically, even though the statistics might be different, I don't know where I fall on the spectrum. I don't know if I'm going to fall here or there. So what should I do? How do you, counsel somebody like that? What do you say to that person? Doesn't sound illogical, doesn't sound irrational, but questioning and seeking.
I think it's important for us to really validate these feelings. These feelings are not irrational. We have been seeing the research, we have been seeing the statistics. And the first thing that, we would do in therapy is to really validate those feelings. And then we would really discuss those thoughts, and we would identify the irrational thoughts that I would have mentioned before. Yeah. And really give that person the tools to navigate this experience. So we would remind them of the protocols, but we would also attend to the psychosocial needs of this person. Why is this person so fearful? Is it because they would have lost their job? Is it because they would have lost a family member due to the virus? And we really need to deal with those underlying feelings. I would personally refer that person to maybe a medical practitioner so that they would be able to discuss, those medical concerns that they may have. So that would really relieve some of their fears.
Yeah. Do you think that's part of the messaging that the government has missed, which is to validate how people are genuinely feeling about their fears or their concerns about the pandemic or the vaccines?
Yes. I think even in news conferences, some persons are fearful because of the statistics, but we have to let Trinidad and Tobago know that this not only affects the individual or the family, but it's something that is happening worldwide. And when we provide these statistics, we really need to provide statistics about mental health so that people would not feel alone, because I find very often that clients say, I wonder if I am the only one that is going through this. And then, we would have to let the client know that, listen, there are many persons coming to therapy because of similar reasons. You are not alone. And that begins, the process of really understanding their emotions and overcoming these feelings of fear and anxiety.
All right, Doc, we just have about a minute left. So what advice would you give to the people out there who are still hesitant, who are still fearful, even at this stage, after all the information that has been shared through the Ministry of Health, as well as other governing bodies on health?
I would just want to let Trinidad and Tobago know that it's a personal choice, yeah? But when we make choices, these choices must be based on research and empirical evidence. We have heard not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but the entire world has been suffering because of this pandemic. And it's important that we make the right choices, not only for ourselves, but for our country and for the entire world. So I urge you to become educated. I encourage you to make the choice that would be best suited for you and those around you.
All right, Mrs. Benjamin, thank you so much for speaking with us this morning, and we hope that people will take your advice on board to just make informed choices as they go ahead.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you so much. Rhonda Thompson-Benjamin, they're counseling psychologist at Enriched Life Ltd.